to be a teacher in the 21st century. Before we start, I would like to put you two questions. One is, what is the difference between teaching in the 20th century and teaching in the 21st century? And the second question is, what does a teacher should know to be a good teacher? But I don't want you to answer me these questions now. I would like you will comment my questions in the end of my presentation. And what is teacher's mission? I would say that we have to present, we have to guide, and we have to access. These are the three main important missions that we have in all types of courses, wherever we are, which we are teaching. But the thesis about to be a teacher in the future should be an expert on one scientific area. Another thing is that we should know to teach with new methodologies and new technologies. But most important, and first of all, I should say that we need to teach how to learn. And these three aspects are the focus of my presentation. And my question is, to evaluate these three aspects, we have to analyze the evolution, what is teaching today, and what is teaching in the future during the 21st century. And the Chinese says that the history is like a crystal ball on which you can see a shadow of the future. So let's use it. And we can say since the beginning, I'd say from Socrates and Aristotle's enormous evolution didn't happen during 2,000 years. But finally, what happened? The blackboard, which the British are in a jokey way saying just talk with chalk. It was happening in the Middle Age, and teachers start to talk and presenting and writing in the screen the ideas, but they have wrote too much that it's confusing. Only during 70 years we evolve from the computer to the PC. It's enormous evolution with the projectors, with the back screens, and all this evolution was fantastic, using multimedia, using web, using contents all over. But in parallel, another thing happens, distance learning. Distance learning since the 18th century, we have very, very short things in the 18th and in the 19th, and in the 20th century, mainly during the Second World War, important step forwards on distance teaching. And we have three important aspects. It was open universities, it was the TV school, and it was video cassettes. This happens from the 70s to the 90s. And in the 90s, another important thing started to show up. It was e-learning. But e-learning was very confusing. Web-based learning, internet-based learning, distance learning, online learning, and finally, B-learning. But what was B-learning in the beginning? B-learning in the beginning was a mix of presence and distance. And this was, let's say, the big evolution. In the beginning, we have, let's say, e-learning 1.0, which was delivering the contents and the students should study, and that's all. But in 2004, Stephen Downes and O'Reilly start to talk about Web 2.0. And this was certain kind of interactivity, asynchronous interactivity. And this type of interactivity shows us the net and fulfills the necessity of interact between student and teachers, between students and students, but mainly or let's say only when John Simmons in the next year, in 2006, start to talk about connectivism, a very important step forward appears. It was synchronous interactivity. This step forward was, let's say, based on new technologies, the virtual classrooms, and the possibility of interact with white bands and things like this. This was really very important. And a new scenery shows up. This new scenery, it is not only e-learning, but just learning. It was asynchronous and synchronous activities. And this shows us a different challenge. And this challenge, it was presented by Rosenberg just in 2001, when he says that in the future, a more radical revolution than the learning will happen. And this revolution will be the disappearing of the E. This means that B-learning today is asynchronous and synchronous. And synchronous can be in presence classrooms or in virtual classrooms. And this is the future today. Okay, about pedagogical and methodological evolution. From behaviorism to constructivism, 1 century. The theory of multi-intelligence with learning styles with Gardner and Fleming from the 80s. The emotional intelligence and learning from Daniel Goleman. Interactivity and learning from the neurophysiological learning process, Alcino Silva, and connectivism with George Simmons. This is, let's say, a very important evolution, but very fast during the last years, let's say the last decades. And the question now is about today. Today, that a student starting a 4 years of technical degree, this means that half of what he is learning in the first year will be outdated by the third year of study. Challenging. But we are currently preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet, but using technologies that have never been invented to solve problems that they are not problems that we know. This is very complicated. A course with 4 years is, let's say, an introduction for 40 years of life learning. That's the only conclusion that we can take from it. And another thing is that we are living exponential times. No doubt about it. And to face this situation, the question is, if the presence, if today is just like this, what it will be the future? The future will be no more than accelerating all the process. And learning and teaching summaries for the school of the future are, let's say, presence and distance, traditional courses and MOOC courses, formal and informal, self-learning, and grades and long life learning with improving your curriculum. And let's have an idea about these main items that we have to be prepared to. These main items are what type of new methodologies and ICT tools to be a good teacher. Let's have a look. And besides be an expert in a specific scientific area, a teacher should know to prepare and present contents in multimedia format, tutoring in presence and online environments, formative continuous assessment and evaluation, know how to use LMS, and if a teacher is working In distance teaching, he should know how to use a virtual classroom. Some other techniques are recommendable, like using inquiries, like using evaluation processes, and so on and so on. But these topics are absolutely necessary. Let's have a look about what? Let's have a look about didactic communication. This is extremely important. Didactic communication is based on narration, non-verbal communication, and presentations like slideshows and other presentation, pictographic communication, and so on, just to communicate, because human beings are multi-channel learners. We need to present our contents in a very structured format. In our research project, IRNET, we are identifying tools for these activities. And the process is present education process activities and problems. First of all, we have to identify the problems and activities. After, identify tools to solve these problems. And after we have identified activities and tools, we have to compare these tools to evaluate which are the best tools, because we have hundreds of tools today available, but not all of them are good enough to offer a good quality of teaching and support what teachers need to. And finally, results and final conclusions. This is the research we are doing in IRNET research project. Okay, this is presenting contents and multimedia format, as we mentioned before, presence and online tutoring, formative continuous assessment, and as well certificative assessment or summative assessment, using LMS, remote collaborative work and virtual meetings, and other recommended tools. This is what we are doing. And other recommended tools are communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking and problem solving, productivity, social networking, reflecting and feedback, searching, and what to do to teach how to learn. This is a very, very important topic. Today, learners have all contents available. And these contents available are in the internet, in books, in videos. In video format, you can go to YouTube or some other platforms and you have everything you want to learn, detailed, step by step. But you have as well in text format. You go and you can search. Some other in a better quality, some other in a lower quality, but you have them. And the question is, how do we learn? Is the first question. Before we start to talk about methodologies, before we start to talk about tools, we should know how does a human being learns. And it's not difficult. Everything is clear today. We receive all the information in the working memory, and this is, let's say, a behaviorism attitude. Let's say we are receiving information. We just have to pay attention to what a teacher is saying or what are the contents. And then the next step, with reflection, with repetition, and so on, we are building our own knowledge. This is constructivism. And these two important steps are, let's say, what it is absolutely necessary for learning. How do we make it? Today we must, let's say, teach how to learn. How? Let's define these two important steps that I have emphasized to you. We have to know methodologies and rules and good practices to be a good learner. Let's say when a student is attending to a teacher or to a video, he cannot be playing and using the mobile phone or other things. He must be absolutely concentrated on the information he is receiving. Another thing is what to do. We know that the first time we see something or we listen to something, we only register 10% from what we read, up 10%, up to 20% of what we listen, and up to 20% of from what we see. This means if you have seen one movie once, when you see the second time the same movie, we are seeing lots of things that we have not seen the first time. It's the same thing as it happens when you are listening to a teacher, we are listening to a pedagogical video, and so on. So we have to be repeating, we have to be reflecting and repeating to be a good student. Now we are in a certain moment to transfer all our information to long-term memory, repeating and magnifying your basis to understand, to have more information, to reflect, and to reflect to build your own knowledge. So when we want to transfer the information from the short-term memory to long-term memory, there are again methodologies, there are rules, there are good practices, and these are today totally identified. We are offering this in our courses to our teachers that are improving their knowledge. Of course, some adjustments should be done according to education level and PhD profiles, because it's not the same thing teaching to a child and teaching to a grown-up people, or to be in a post-graduation or in a doctorate courses. But about the students of the future, students are dreaming about doing things, and one thing is to dream about to be a teacher. What shall we offer them? They are today different from they were some years ago. From a research made during what students are doing during, let's say, the second level education, secondary schools, they are using less than 2% of their time on reading. They are seeing television, they are seeing, let's say, movies, they are using mobile phones, they are using video games, but reading is not the target. In the interview with the student of the future, I am going to show you what is the opinion of this student of the future.
And my conclusion is that students, they
Digital e-model learners has different learning styles. They are multimedia content, distant learning.
Yes, you know very well how to make conclusions. Thank you very much, Anna. It was a pleasure to be with you, as always. Thank you. Say bye.
Bye.
The next step is, but really what in fact we have made is that in 2 decades we have created a knowledge and a disinformation society. Today we have too much information all over. And our conclusions from what I have been presenting are, what shall we do? Convert the school into a factory of dreams. Teach us in didactic communication wizards. Convert students' potential into teachers' passion. And motivate students with what they like. Multimedia contents, digital and new technologies. This is what we need for the school of the future. But if you don't believe, let me show what teacher skills are. Now, in Kiev, directly with you, teachers should be an expert in a scientific area, more to know how to teach with new methodologies and ICT tools, and as well, teachers should know how to teach, how to learn with normal things and huge quantities of information. This is a huge challenge. There is a question that I have for you. Are we teachers prepared for the future? I'm not going to give you these answers. Please think about it, reflect about it, and answer to yourself and prepare yourself if you need to. Thank you very much for your attention. It was a pleasure to be you. I'm ready for your questions and answers.